Welcome to RCAM. I'm your host, Ryan, and thank you for tuning in today. So, today we are going to be talking about the dystopian nightmare of euthanasia for basically any reason. So, we'll have a couple stories that we'll be diving into, some recent, some a little bit older, covering a range of euthanasia cases ranging from people getting euthanized simply for feeling depressed, people getting euthanized because they're poor, people getting euthanized because um, they have mental illness, people getting euthanized because they're tired. So yeah, we have a lot to discuss here, and this is a topic that I think is as dystopian as it gets. It stands in the face of medicine because the idea and concept of medicine is meant to preserve life, and euthanasia by the hands of doctors does the exact opposite. It ends life. So anyway, welcome to RCAM. I'm your host Ryan, and thank you for tuning in today. If you like my content, please like, subscribe, and do all of the things because that helps me grow, and I appreciate it. All right. So this conversation about euthanasia has been going on for quite a while now. I know it started getting more prominent when Canada passed their MAID program, which stands for Medical Assistance in Dying. I call it MAME though, uh, and that means Medical Assistance in Murder because that's what's happening. These doctors are murdering uh, by the doctors that are sworn to do no harm are directly inflicting harm that ends another human being's life. We call that murder. But if you're in a hospital and you want them to do it, we call that well, that's being called euthanasia. Just imagine for a second that you uh, are not feeling very well and a doctor says, "Hey, I have a cure to help you with your illness." Um, and you say you're willing to do whatever it takes. He says, "Okay, all right, meet me in this back alley, and I'm gonna take care of you. I'm gonna treat you. I'm gonna give you the treatment." And instead of healing you, he pulls out a gun and shoots you in the head. And that's basically what these people are agreeing to. Although we don't have the brutality of it, it's sanitized murder. It's still murder nonetheless, and it should be deeply unsettling. In no other context would it be okay. I mean, it dramatically changes. Our feelings would dramatically change on this if these euthanasia clinics were in alleyways or in somebody's basement. Like, then we would recognize it for what it is. And instead of using lethal injection or whatever they're using, the death pods, they're using bullets. We would call that murder, and rightly so because that's what it is. But because they're sanitizing it and using euphemistic language to describe what they're doing, it's fine. It's fine. Everybody's cool with it. Not only is it fine, they're expanding it to include all sorts of crazy conditions. So that brings me to this first article that we are going to talk about. So this was making the rounds. This is by the Free Press for Free People, and the headline reads, "I'm 28 and I'm scheduled to die in May." So as of right now, she is still alive. Some right to die activists like this is so crazy to me that we have activists that are advocating for people to die. Welcome to dystopia. Here we are. We are at a place where instead of people protesting the gross, this should be protested uh, because it is anti life, it is anti medicine, it is anti human, and it is sick and wrong. No, we have activists fighting for people's right to kill themselves. It's just so crazy to me. And you know what's crazy too? Just thinking of kind of because I have a background a little bit with working with people that were mentally ill in some capacity and people that were abusing substances. Do you know that every time somebody threatened to kill themselves or end their own lives, we'd have to take that very seriously because it's a very serious thing. And we would have to call mobile mental health, or we'd have to call the police, and they'd have to go into inpatient treatment. It was a whole affair, as it should be, because it's a very serious thing. But but now you call, say, "Hey, I'm depressed, doc." Oh, let me give you a prescription to die. Just backwards. All right. So some right to die activists want everybody to have access to euthanasia, even young people with mental illness, and they are also making suicide contagious. Zoraya Turbeek, 28, expects to be euthanized in early May. Her plan, she said, is to be cremated. So she's picking her funeral. You're getting a whole service here. I did not want to burden my partner with having to keep the grave tidy. Turbeek texted me. We have not picked an urn yet, but that will be my new house. Yeah, treating it like a vacation, permanent home. Yeah, except she's talking about ending her life and her ashes being put into an urn. She added an urn emoji after house and trying to make it cute and trendy. It's not. It's not cute. It's not trendy. It's sick. Terbeek, who lives in a little Dutch town near the German border, once had ambitions to become a psychiatrist. How ironic. But she was never able to muster the will to finish school or start a career. She said she was hobbled by her depression and autism and borderline personality disorder. Now she was tired of living. Despite, she said, being in love with her boyfriend, a 40-year-old IT programmer, and living in a nice house with their two cats. Excuse me. She recalled her psychiatrist telling her that they had tried everything and there's nothing more than that we can do for you. It's never gonna get any better. Imagine going to your psychiatrist and telling them, sharing with them that you are experiencing crippling depression and that they're already aware that you have a borderline personality disorders. Instead of them giving you some hope, they say, "Hmm, yeah, you're right. It's never going to get any better. Nothing we can do about you. Sorry for your luck." And that's what this guy did. Instead of giving this woman who needs hope, who needs to know that it's going to get better, who needs to see a light at the end of the tunnel, he says it's never gonna get any better. Un- Unbelievable. Like this guy should be charged with I don't know gross I don't even know like he should be charged with gross negligence. He should have his license revoked. He should maybe even be complicit in murder for this person by encouraging her to kill herself. Like that is insane to me. Or not giving her hope. It's just crazy to me. And these are people that I mean, I think this guy is definitely an outlier. I hope, but it is just it is just deeply disturbing to me. We have regular man in the comments, and he says pagans love death. It's no surprise. Yeah, it is no surprise. It is no surprise. And yet I'm still horrified by what I'm reading. Horrified by what I'm seeing. Horrified that next month that this woman is going to lose her life. And appalled by this psychiatrist. So it's at that point she decided to die. It's When you have somebody, a medical or a psychiatric professional who you trust, who you built a relationship, say it's never going to get any better, yeah, maybe I would feel that way. If the person that I've entrusted with my mental health, my mental health, is saying it's hopeless. Your situation is hopeless. Yeah, I would feel that way too. Thanks, Cly. Yeah, I like my hat. I was just feeling lazy today. I didn't want to put gel or anything in my hair. I'm being a bum. So so yeah. So she recalled that her psychiatrist, had said that there's nothing more that she could do, and then she decided that she was going to go through with this. And I was always very clear that if it doesn't get any better, I can't do this anymore. Exact opposite of the message that we are supposed to be communicating. No thread of hope, no lifeline. That's it. And the thing with depression is that you can get to the other side of it. The thing with borderline personality disorders, that can be treated with medication or therapy. These are treatable things. Her situation was not hopeless. And take it from me, I'm somebody who had depression. I'm somebody who over 10 years ago went to therapy for a season of my life. And in a very short window, probably about 6 months, my therapist did their job. I got better, got over it. I I have not been depressed since. Not even a little depressed. I don't have seasons of depression. I'm generally a pretty happy guy. I do get depressed when, like, depressing things happen, like when people die. Yeah, that's or you lose a job. Those are understandable reasons to be depressed. Uh, but when I had it for other reasons, I need to talk through it, and I need to have a therapist that encouraged me to get that I would get through it, and they helped me out a great deal. And I do owe part of my life to the I actually saw two like therapists at the same time. One lady was like tried to convince me like I was a drug addict, so she was no good. So I saw kind of both sides of it. I'm getting a little too personal, but it is what it is. Um, and then I had another lady that was cool as a cucumber, and she just talked to me like a human being, treated me like a human being, listened to me, and I was able to work everything out. Would you say therapy helped or you're growing in the word? I'd say it was probably a little bit of both. I think at that time, I think more than anything, I just needed somebody to just help me kind of process all these things that were going on in my mind. Because at this point in my life, I was very just not well. Um, and I needed somebody to help me kind of unravel that. Do Do I don't recall her doing anything profound. Like, it's not like I went home and, she gave me some techniques to do or anything like that. She was literally just somebody that listened to me. So I think if I had like a pastor or a mentor or somebody in my life that was willing to listen to me, I think that would have been just as helpful. And again too, I'm under the impression that if you're going to therapy, it should not be for a long time. Like, if you have a therapist that's good, they're gonna they're going to want you to get better. Like, there should be an end goal in mind. And I was fine. I went 6 months, done. It wasn't a long time. And I was able to kind of work through my issues. And I think if you have a good, pastor or faith leader, they can help in some degree. And, a lot of churches, they have like pastoral counseling and stuff like that. I'd probably do that first if I'm being honest with you. And now, like, I don't have any need or desire to go to therapy. Regular man says, I had a therapist who really screwed me up early in the ministry, and I had a few friends who just listened who were awesome. Therapy, in my opinion, is garbage. I generally think that, and and I would agree for the most part. I would never, I would probably not do therapy today. So I think it was maybe a little bit different than probably getting bad. I was fortunate where I did see both sides of it. I saw, I had two at the same time. One woman was trying to convince me I was a drug addict. I wasn't even at the time I was seeing them. I wasn't even doing drugs. I wasn't doing anything. I was clean for a little bit. So yeah, that was not good. So anyway, go to your faith leaders probably first. Well, I'm not giving you advice. All right, I'm not telling you what to do, but that's what I would probably do if I was going through a crisis situation. But I think I am uh, mental. I have mental fortitude now. When I was 18, not so much. I had a lot going on. All right, so at that point, she decided to die. It was over. As if to advertise her hopelessness, Trebek has a tattoo of a tree of life on her upper left arm, but in reverse. Oh, that's really sad. So it's almost like she's like, speaking of paganism, she's, like making this like an idol almost, tattooing it on her body. I just want to read this comment from regular or from Cly. She said, "Yeah, spectrum with churches. Yeah, not all, but some. Yeah, and this is the thing too with churches, man. You gotta go to a church, that you trust, that you're part of, that your community, that you have an open relationship with your pastor. You go to a lot of these churches, they don't even know you. They don't have no idea who you are. You can slip in and out of the service and nobody even recognize that you were there. And I think that's dangerous. I think you need to be a part of a community that knows who you are. The pastor knows you by name, and I think that's biblical too. And is able to have a relationship with you. And if it gets so big to the point where you that can't happen, I would probably start to look for another church, or at the very least, if they're a church that offers small groups, get involved in a small group. It's important to have that community. I think one of the big reasons that we're having this mental health crisis today is that people don't have community. They're all isolated on their own islands. Even people in the church, they're not connected the way they need to be. They don't have people to talk to. They can't work through all of these problems, and they're left to their own devices, and that's a bad place to be. That's just a very dangerous spot to be. There's that old saying, idle hands is the devil's playground. Well, like if you're idle, if you're by yourself, if you don't have anybody around you to talk to listen to you, if every time you get into a conversation, somebody's like this, staring at their phone, not looking you in the eyes, not talking to you like you're a human being, then yeah, I'd feel isolated. It makes sense why people are depressed because they're missing that sense of community that this I love doing this. I love these live streams. I love talking to you guys, but it's never going to be the same as sitting down face to face with somebody else to help walk you through your problems and to do life with you. Just somebody to listen to you. It's so important that you have these relationships. It's so important that you're connected with your church. It's so important that you're fellowshipping with other believers. To go out it alone is a lonely place, and that's not a good place for Christians. We should not be there. We're supposed to do this together. We're in this together. You know, the church is a team sport, and being isolated and being cut off from people does us no good. And obviously, I don't think this woman was part of a church. So she added, the doctor really takes her time. It's not that they walk in and say, "Lay down, please." Most of the time, it is first a cup of coffee to settle the nerves and create a soft atmosphere. Uh, then she asks if I skipped a part of this. I don't even know what she's saying right here. Then the doctor will administer a sedative followed by a drug that will stop. So she's describing that process. uh, Beak's heart. When she's dead, euthanasia review committee will evaluate her death to ensure the doctor adhered to the due care criteria, and the Dutch government will almost certainly declare that the life of Zora Ter Beek was lawfully ended. No, it wasn't. Lawfully ended. You, they're going to take her life because she was depressed, had mental illness, and an autism. I worked with children with autism for 3 years. If we're now considering that something deemable of death, what does it mean for them? What does it mean for their lives? We know it's not going to get. We know their circumstances are very like people with autism, like severe, and I don't think she has it. So I think that that term is used a little bit more loosely. But if we think we determine that their quality of life is never going to get any better, does that give us the legal precedent to end it? Very, very dystopian stuff, as I was saying. She asked her boyfriend to be with her to the very end. There won't be any funeral. She doesn't have much family. So again, kind of isolated with the exception of her boyfriend. She doesn't think her friends will feel like going. And and it tells me too that, like, well, hopefully her friends are not going because they don't want to condone it. Um Regular man writes, "My kid has autism. He's amazing. That's a BS excuse for cowards to use, and it really pisses me off that she'd use that." Yeah, I think so. And I think a lot of people, like, autism is one of these things that's kind of trendy. Like, it's a trendy thing to say, to just describe that they're just quirky or weird people. Where they say neurodivergent, I think is what they say. Um, but even if it were severe cases, and I've worked with some severe cases. I mean, kids that can barely walk, go into fits of rage, bite you, violent, their lives are still worthy. Their lives still have inherent value and should not be ended because we don't approve of their quality of life. Like, who gets a say in that? And this whole notion of dying with dignity. What it's dying with dignity because you took your own life. That's not dignified. That's actually the opposite. It's undignified. No, the person that dies with dignity is the person that faces terminal illness and fights with every tooth in their body, or every fiber of their being. That's the person that dies with dignity, not the coward that ends their own life. And they're not even the ones doing it. They're having somebody else do it for them. Undignified. So she says, "I'm a little afraid of dying because it's the ultimate unknown," she said. "We don't really know what's next, or is there nothing?" That's scary. Yeah, and that's the life you have if you don't have Jesus. If you don't know the Lord. It should be scary because you have no certainty or assurance of salvation. Only fearful expectation of what comes next. Now, I do want to take a moment briefly to talk about. So, we hear a lot about her and how she's feeling, and obviously, the fact that they're allowing this girl to go through this is horrific. It's medical malpractice on a level we've never seen before. It's the opposite of medicine. Instead of doctors preserving life, they're ending it, and they're becoming grim reapers. So that's bad. But then nobody thinks about the families and the people that they're leaving behind. It sounds like this boyfriend and her are in love, and he's getting left behind. And I hope he's doing everything he can to talk her out of it, but it doesn't sound like it to me. But it's such a selfish thing to do because your life matters. Maybe in the moment it doesn't matter to you, but it matters to other people. And it's like you hear this. We've internalized this mantra of do what's best for you. You do you. And I think it's had devastating consequences. Because what if you put yourself first always, including to this point, or you only consider your feelings and nobody else's? You don't live for anybody beyond yourself, and then when you can't even live for yourself, you end your own life. No, one of the things that actually makes life meaningful, that makes it beautiful, is living a life in service to other people. Is living for something beyond just yourself, is giving your heart to somebody else and looking out for their own well-being beyond your own. It is said that love is willing the good of other people. And when you seek to end your own life, you're not willing the good of the people around you. That's a net negative for everybody that loves you. And you're going to leave a permanent gaping hole that likely they will never recover from. That's the seriousness of death. It's painful for everybody involved. Every person I've lost in my life, I remember them. And it's still painful when I think about them. And even more tragic when it was somebody that had a full life ahead of them, where it could have gotten better. There's nothing more tragic than that because she died for nothing. And not only did she die for nothing, but there are people trying to use her death to encourage other people to take their own lives. That this is the right way. And we have entered into a culture of death. Death with euthanasia, death with abortion, death in war. It's just nonstop death and destruction. And unfortunately, the enemy has had a field day on these people. And what's even more startling is when you understand that most of our culture, by medical standards, by the standards of the psychiatric community, are depressed and have some mental disorder. What happens when that starts to spread, that ideology, and it already is, starts to be implemented here? What you see in these other countries are blueprints for what's going to happen here. And when I look at all these young people experiencing depression, I see things like this. I grow increasingly more concerned for them. Because unlike the psychiatrist that was talking to this young woman, I actually know there's a hope. I actually know there's a future. I actually know that things can get better, even if for a time they aren't good. Even for a time they are struggling, I know things can get better. I know God has a plan for each and every single person, a plan to prosper us, a plan to give us a hope and a future. But if we take our own lives, that future will never become a reality. We eliminate all hope. And that's no place to be. All right, let's talk about made. Wow, I got a pretty little bit more into that than I had planned, but it's just something that wrecks me. It really deeply troubles my soul that this is happening. So I just want to read briefly from this report. So hold on one second. So in 2021, there were 10,064 MAID provisions reported in Canada, accounting for 3.3% of all deaths in Canada. That's horrific. That's horrific. I don't know the population size of Canada, um, but that's insane to me because it should be precisely zero. The number of cases of MAID in 2021 represent a growth rate of 32.4% over 2020. All provinces continue to experience a steady year-over-year growth. When all data sources are considered, the total number of medically assisted deaths reported in Canada since the Parliament of Canada passed federal legislation that allows eligible Canadian adults to request medical assistance in dying in 2016 is 31,664. So here we have some stats from their MAME program in Canada, uh, and it's just growing. More and more people are signing up to end their own lives, and this could be for medical conditions, but this could also include psychiatric conditions. I want to read to you this story. Uh, So this is from Spiked. Now Canada is euthanizing autistic people. As we talked about briefly before, a father has discovered he is powerless to stop his perfectly healthy daughter from being killed. Imagine one day you discover that your adult daughter, who still lives with you, wants to be euthanized. As far as you are aware, she's healthy. She suffers from autism and ADHD, but no physical illness or disabilities that you know of. You know that she has faced many difficulties in her life, but you love her and desperately want to prevent her death. You are left fighting against her doctors who encourage her decision and are perfectly happy to help her go through with this. To make this nightmare worse, no one will even tell you why your daughter has been approved to die. This is an awful reality facing one father in Alberta, Canada. A judge issued a ruling this week that clears the way for a 27-year-old woman known to the court only as MV to be accepted into Canada's medical assistance in dying uh, MAID program, despite attempts by her father to prevent this. This is wild. This is wild. As a father, this resonates with me even more. Like I couldn't imagine, my doctor going for a checkup for depression and then finding out that she's being slated to take her own life. I'd be absolutely devastated. Hold on one second. My apologies. My daughter was crying. I had to go out and see what's going on, but she is okay. All right. All right. So here's another one. I believe this one's from Canada. Doctors approve impoverished man with disability for assisted suicide despite his desire to live. Earlier this year, in September, a Canadian man went public with his struggles relating to disability and poverty, telling the world that it has become so hard he's considering made, though he admitted he has no desire to die. His desperation led him to feel like he had no other choice. And now, at least one doctor has signed off on his request for assisted suicide. Les Landry previously explained that he is potentially facing homelessness when he turned 65. His disability benefits ended, and he was instead pushed into senior benefits. His expenses massively increased, while fewer of his necessities were covered. Now, I do believe this gentleman um, was ultimately approved or ultimately had a GoFundMe started, and wouldn't you know it, yeah, he no longer wants to end his own life because his situation changed. Imagine, he spoke to a therapist just like that other girl did, said, "Yeah, you're right. Your situation isn't going to get any better. Might as well go through with it." No, but his lot changed, and he was able to overcome this and get out of it. And he's not the only one. Another headline, I'm just going to read it real quick. Canadian man applies for euthanasia because he can't afford a home, but reconsider. This is the same guy after receiving a GoFundMe. And it's crazy that we would even consider ending somebody's life for poverty when obviously we know that their problem is financial. Th- I I don't understand it. I don't understand how we could even consider this if we know the source of. Well, it seems like we need to financially help this guy, and this goes back to the importance of a church community. I was on a podcast yesterday, um, and we had talked about kind of the the role of church in culture, and if the church was the church, I don't think we would have as many people experiencing depression. I also don't think we would have as many people in extreme poverty, at least to the point where they're thinking of considering their own life, because the church would be able to meet those needs. That's the purpose of the church. We are supposed to care for the widows, care for the orphans, care for the poor. We're supposed, if this man were in our church, we are supposed to help him in his time of crisis. The church should be so radical in their attempts to help other people and give and be a place where there's a sense of community that they are actually a threat to government handout programs. People's first instinct should be, I need to go to my church. I know they can help me when they fall on hard times. Not, oh, let me apply for food stamps. Let me apply for disability. They should be able to turn to their local churches to provide for them and support them. And when you don't have that community and you're at the end of the rope like that guy was just discussing, well, what other choice are you left with? Obviously I don't, like my message to that guy would be, you can find hope, and it looks like he did. It looks like like other people took matters into their own hand. Speaking community, they came through clutch, and that guy is now going to live because of it. But if that hadn't happened, I'd hate to see what would have became of him. All right, a couple more here I want to cover. So this was sent to Zuby posted this. He said, "My parents received this leaflet in the mail this week." This is a while back too. So some of these I am going back. So the most recent one was the one that was happening with the Dutch woman. Hold on a second. I am still getting over this cold, so my voice is hoarse. Um, so yeah, Zuby's parents were sent this, and yeah, they got sent an assisted dying pamphlet, and that to me is just. Hold on a second. All right, guys, my voice is acting up, so I think I've reached capacity for today. There's more that I wanted to cover, but I think I made my point. Euthanasia made this death cult is evil and it needs to be stopped. And we have a responsibility to speak out against it and encourage people to choose life, to live that they have a hope and a purpose, and pray for these people, especially this young woman, because the road isn't over for her. Pray that God intervenes. Pray that God moves her life. Pray that God saves her and maybe turns her life around and uses her as a testimony to reach other people that are considering this madness because her life matters. The rest of these people's lives matter, and there is hope for them. And I'm going to leave it there. Pray my voice and my cough goes away, so I don't have a flare up during tomorrow's stream. Anyway, guys, God bless you all. I appreciate every single one of you that tuned in. Have a blessed night. Deuces.